The 30th of January, 1933. Adolf Hitler is appointed Chancellor of Germany, and within weeks, the Nazi regime begins dismantling democracy and targeting perceived enemies of the state. Jews are stripped of their rights, political opponents are silenced, and the first concentration camp Dachau is opened near Munich. Over the next 12 years, more than 44,000 camps and incarceration sites will be established across Europe, becoming instruments of forced labor, torture, and genocide. But not all horrors in Nazi Germany wear uniforms or deliver fiery speeches. In towns and villages across northern Germany, children begin to disappear. The victims are always boys, young, innocent, and dressed in sailor suits. Their bodies are found days later in pine forests, lying peacefully on the ground as if simply asleep. No bruises, no blood, no struggle. Authorities label the deaths as accidents, runaways lost to cold and misfortune. But the pattern continues, and no one notices. Behind the ticking of a pocket watch and the soft voice of an old man offering repairs, a predator moves undisturbed through the heart of the Reich. He travels by train, avoids suspicion, and earns the trust of his victims with sweets and stories. Children call him Uncle Tick-Tock. However, what the children do not know is that behind the caring face of an old man is a sexual deviant and dangerous mass murderer who has spent half his life either in prison or mental institutions. His name is Adolf Seefeldt. Adolf Gustav Seefeldt was born on the 6th of March 1870 in the city of Potsdam, then part of the North German Confederation. He was the youngest of 9 children and grew up in a deeply troubled household. His father was an alcoholic who showed little interest in his family, while his mother worked as a prostitute. Because Seefeldt was deeply saddened by the situation at home, he often left. However, his parents never cared where their son wandered off to. At the age of 12, Adolf was brutally assaulted and sexually abused by 2 men, an event that left deep psychological scars. He rarely spoke of the trauma in later years, but it likely shaped the disturbing path he would follow. He trained as a locksmith and later became a watchmaker. To make a living, Seefeldt repaired watches for people. In 1890, he moved to the northern German city of Lübeck, where he married Katharina and started a family. However, the marriage ended in divorce after just over a year, since Seefeldt was emotionally unstable. One of his sons, at the age of 19, was later committed to a lunatic asylum for what were then called moral crimes, a grim reflection of Seefeldt's own life. After the end of his short-lived marriage, Seefeldt's life took a darker path. In 1895, at the age of 25, he was accused of sexually assaulting a young boy and was imprisoned for the first time. A psychiatric evaluation at the time revealed serious mental health issues. From that point on, he spent nearly half of his life in and out of prisons and psychiatric hospitals. When he was eventually released after many years, he began targeting defenseless children. Seefeldt had no permanent home. He wandered through northern Germany, offering watch repairs to villagers. Because of his age, quiet manner, and appearance, an old man in a long coat and felt hat, people saw him as harmless. Children even gave him a nickname, Uncle Tick-Tock. But behind this friendly image was a man who carefully planned his crimes. He often lured boys into pine forests. Many of the victims were dressed in sailor suits. His first confirmed murders took place in February 1935, 2 years after Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. Within 1 week, 2 young boys were found dead in the town of Schwerin. Their bodies showed no obvious injuries, which made it hard for police to understand how they had died. Some investigators believed Seefeldt used poison. Others thought he strangled the children. A few even suggested that Seefeldt had placed his victims into a hypnotic sleep, then likely sexually abused them before leaving them in the woods, never waking them from hypnosis. The children would later die of hypothermia, which Seefeldt had either accepted or intended. He never stayed in one place for long, and never returned to the same village twice, and identifying him as a suspect proved extremely difficult. His crimes went unnoticed at first, and many of the deaths occurred in autumn and winter. Police often assumed the children had run away, gotten lost in the forest, and died from cold or hunger. Only when several bodies were found under similar conditions did police begin to suspect that a serial killer might be involved. By that time, Seefeld had already murdered boys across several towns. It is estimated he killed as many as 100 children, although only 12 murders could be proven. All of the victims were boys under the age of 12. The youngest was just 4 years old. One important discovery came when the body of 11-year-old Gustav Thomas was found in a forest near the town of Wittenberge. An autopsy showed signs of suffocation. Investigators then believed that Seefeld had most likely strangled his victims. The media reported that he had murdered at least 30 children and sexually abused over 100 more. For a long time, the police failed to connect the cases. Seefeld kept moving, and the large area in which the crimes took place made the investigation harder. Eventually, police began looking into door-to-door salesmen and traveling workers. A suspect was arrested, but before the trial could begin, he died by suicide in custody. The public believed the case had been solved, but only a few days later, another boy was found dead. Police then turned their attention to a quiet, elderly man who often visited villages to fix watches. Their suspicions grew stronger when a teenager came forward and reported that he had once gone into the woods with Uncle Tick-Tock, but fled after noticing his strange behavior. This testimony gave the investigation a new direction. When police looked into Seefeld's past, they found a long history of sexual crimes, court convictions, and years spent in psychiatric institutions, a long-standing pattern of mental instability. Soon after, Seefeld was arrested. In January 1936, his trial began at the Schwerin Regional Court. It lasted 4 weeks, with over 150 witnesses and several expert testimonies. Seefeld denied all charges and never confessed. There was no direct evidence, only a growing body of circumstantial proof that pointed to him. On the 21st of February, the final arguments were presented, and the next day Seefeld was found guilty of multiple murders and sentenced to death. He appealed the sentence, but it was rejected. The case caused discomfort within the Nazi regime. It was deeply unsettling to admit that dozens of innocent German boys had been murdered by one of their own, an Aryan German. To protect their ideological image, Nazi authorities shifted the blame onto broader social forces. The prosecutor declared that liberalism is jointly responsible with the accused for his deeds, and Nazi newspapers followed this line. Nachtausgabe wrote that the sentences were the strongest justification for National Socialist legislation for the protection of race and people. With no Jewish connection to exploit, the regime instead used the case to attack homosexuality and so-called vagrants, reinforcing their propaganda message. There was no criticism of the police, who had initially failed to investigate at all. Adolf Seefeldt was 66 years old when he was executed by guillotine on the 23rd of May 1936 at Schwerin prison. Before the execution, he was allegedly castrated. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.